everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday After School Club, our Do Space Wednesday After School Club. Make it! My name is Kim. I'm a Community Learning Specialist with Do Space, and today we are going to be continuing making our macrame binary bead bracelet. So if you joined us last week, or if you you have the if you were part of our few folks that kind of grabbed our kits, then hopefully you are kind of with us right here. If you are not, if you're just joining us, or if you kind of want to see what's going on for what we did last week, you can always find that on our Twitch page or our Do Space YouTube channel. And basically, if you have some string and some beads, you can do this. It's really, really easy and a lot of fun, I think. And you're kind of getting an idea of how binary kind of code works. So we are using kind of a machine learning binary code. This is our alphabet one. If you have it in our kit, then you will have that. If you did not want one of our get one of our kits and you are but following along with us, you can find the binary alphabet online. So yeah, so we are just continuing on, and hopefully I think we'll finish up today our bracelet. And so hopefully, as you know, we kind of got to 2 beads with our binary bracelet. I'm using the first letter of my first name, K. So we got to 0 and 1. So obviously I'm using my pinks for zeros and the greens for ones. We will just be continuing on our journey of making our binary bead bracelet. So what we talked about last week, basically what we did last week was make 4 square knots and then start adding our beads, and then completing a square knot in between each bead. And so what we are going to be doing, we left off where we left off last week is we left off completing our square knot, and I know that we did that because my little bump is on the left hand side, so I know you go from doing it the left hand side, right hand side. So I know my little bump's on the left, so we're going to be starting off on the left hand side, if you remember from last time. So kind of as a nice quick refresher of how we are making our square knots. I'm just going to maybe lower the light a little bit. Maybe. There we go. I think that looks a little bit better. So what we are going to be doing for again, just as a refresher for our square knots, is that we have our 4 strings. We have our 2 outer long strings, and it's kind of hard to tell that these are longer because I couldn't fit all the strings in. But basically our 2 outside strings are longer than our 2 middle guys. And what we are doing is we are basically I'm going to be putting out my right string out kind of perpendicular or horizontal. I'm going to be taking my left string and making, I think I was kind of referring to them as a backwards P. And I'm going to be bringing that string over my 2 middle strings. And then I'm going to be taking my left hand string, going over my right hand string underneath the 2 middle and kind of up and into that P area, and then tightening up. So I'm kind of holding down my middle 2 strings with my thumb while I'm kind of pulling, or just like kind of going back and forth pulling that. And you can see how I now have like a little bump on my right hand side, so I know that I started my thing. I'm just now remembering that we needed to put a bead on, so that was silly of me. So hopefully you didn't tighten it too much. I'm going to kind of just loosen that up And I'm just doing that by holding onto that little bump and then pulling that string out. So we're gonna restart that over. Sorry, friends, I should have reminded us that, but I just wanted to kind of remind you how we do our square knot again. So, okay, so we need to put, because we finished off, we did a square knot, we completed our square knot last time. We're ready for our next bead. And so based off of my binary code piece of paper, we did our 0, 1. I'm ready for another 0, so I'm ready for another pink bead. And I know on your screen, I think it's looking a little more white than pink. It's a very, very light pink. And so kind of as a reminder of how I think it's the easiest way to put on a bead is kind of wrapping it or kind of laying it over my index finger, and then taking my right hand and pinching where it, where it came over my index finger, kind of pinching it again with my other two thumb and index finger, so that I have just this little, almost like a little nub there of the two strings. And then I'm going to just kind of squeeze my my bead onto that little nub. Kind of have to shimmy it on there and then kind of pull it out. Now I have like some pretty long fingernails right now, so it's pretty easy for me to kind of pull that out. But if you need some tweezers, you can always get some tweezers to kind of help pull that. Yeah. So now we are going to then do our square knot. So again, this will be a nice reminder. So I'm going to be taking my my right string, making it horizontal, taking my left string, kind of making a backwards P with it. I'm putting it over my middle two strings, taking my right hand string, bringing it over this string, my right hand string, bringing it underneath my middle two strings, and then up and into this loop, this P, like the loop we made with the backwards P. So, and then we are pulling it tight. So then we have obviously, beads going everywhere, have made, that's basically a half knot. So in a couple of weeks when we do our keychain, that's what we are going to be doing just over and over and over again, and it'll make a cool swirl. So that's nice, or like it turns. That'll make more sense when we do it. But yeah, so now we basically did our knot from the left, and now we're going to be doing it again from the right to complete our square knot. So again, I keep my left string then kind of horizontal. I'm taking my right hand string, making what looks like a P. Taking my left hand string, bringing it over my left hand string, or right hand string, sorry, bringing it underneath, and then underneath my middle two string, and then up and into that P loop. And then again, pulling tight. So it completes our square knot. I'm going to try and keep your middle two strings kind of right. Oh, I'm getting all like twisty turny on ya. So yeah, and then we've completed our square knot. And so again, we basically from here until we do all of our ones and zeros, complete our letter, our binary letter, we just basically do a square knot in between. So we're going to add our next bead. For me, it's going to be a 0 again. Again, it might be different for you depending on what letter you are using. So kind of as a reminder, I'm going to bring my two middle strings over my index finger. I'm going to kind of pinch with my index finger and thumb, pinch again so I get this little string nub. I need another 0, so I'm going to be putting on my pink, and then I'm going to kind of just shimmy it on there and pulling the string through, making sure my middle two strings are nice and not twisted. And then again, completing our square knot. So our backwards P, bringing our right string over our left hand string, underneath our middle 2, up and into our P loop, pulling tight, and then doing the same on the opposite side. So now, actually it looks like a P, bringing my left hand string over the right hand, underneath our 2 middle strings, up and into the loop, or P loop, and then pulling tight. Okay, boom. So now we're going on, we're just trucking along. Okay, so for me, I'm now switching it up. So my next number is a 1. So I'm needing to put on my green bead. So I'll just put that on. So again, I kind of talked about this last week, but macrame is just macrame is not in French. And so it's just, you're making a type of textile. I mean, technically this is obviously not a textile, but if you look up macrame, there are wall hangings, there are all sorts of things that are created via macrame, and it's like a textile that is just all made with knots, and it's really, really cool. And I don't know, you can make plant hangers, like for the pots. People make wall hangings. It's really popular back in the 70s. And I feel like now it's just kind of making a comeback. I don't know, I kind of talked about this last week in my preparation of just, reminding myself on how to make all these knots and everything. I found it's just a very nice, tranquil thing to do. I think, kind of gives you something to focus on. There's an outcome. You're actually making something. It kind of works on your fine motor skills, in terms of just making sure that your knots are all good to go, and moving your string back and forth. My next one is going to be another 0, so another pink bead. And this is a very, very old kind of handcraft. Other kind of handcrafts are like crocheting and knitting, and this is a very, very old one. I mean, there have been evidence of macrame. Macrame made things back, thousands of years ago. So it's a very, very old type of handcraft, which is pretty cool that if you're doing this along with me, then you are continuing a tradition, a type of creating a tapestry or a fabric, tradition that is from, several hundred years ago, so, or thousands of years ago, not even hundreds, but thousands, that, the first people, I read that, the Phoenicians, and Egyptians, Egyptians were doing stuff back in the, 1000 BCE, before the Common Era. So, it's a very, very old type of thing. So that's pretty cool when you're thinking of it in that way, that you're doing something that's literally thousands of years old. I think it's cool anyway. I guess it's your definition of cool. I also kind of, when I go to art museums, I'm also one of those people that think it's really cool when I stand in front of a really famous artwork and think this artist stood in front of this painting, did this, 500, 600, 200 years ago, and they were standing in this exact position at some point, looking at this exact painting, which, that kind of stuff is kind of cool when you think about it in that context. Okay. So hopefully you are just trucking along with your, again, I'm kind of making sure I'm keeping my 2 middle strings as kind of neat and, not twisty as possible. Okay, so I'm down to going to be, well, I have 3 beads left, but I know that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there are only 8 numbers, sorry, 8 numbers in my, each code, so I'm down to my last 2. So basically you need 8 beads if you didn't have this as part of your kit, if you were just kind of following along with us without a kit, we are doing it in a way that, like, I gave out 16 beads, 8 of each color, but you only really need 8. So again, and you didn't have to be using the beads I gave you. You could use any bead that you had. Maybe you didn't like the colors, which is totally fair and totally fine. And so maybe you didn't like the colors, or maybe you had cooler beads like glitter beads or striped beads or something like that, or not pony beads, maybe ceramic beads or glass beads that you wanted to use. I even saw this, and I almost did this. Saw a bracelet like this, only with like tiny little hex nuts that you get like at the hardware store, which I thought was kind of cool. But I decided to go with pony beads because they're a little bit more colorful. And they would have been all the same color, so it would have been hard to bring in the binary code aspect of it. So we are, again, bringing this up and under. So, and this is just one type of knot amongst a lot of different knots. Next week we're going to be taking a break next week. But in the following week, we are going to be making a really cool keychain, and we'll just be doing half knots. So basically, instead of going back and forth, we'll just be doing it from one side, making the knots from one side, and it kind of gives a spinning, twirling effect. That makes sense. Kind of like starts to rotate, which is kind of cool. And there's just, I don't know, a lot of things you can do with macrame. Okay, hopefully, maybe you are, maybe you're not, on your last bead. So I'm going to be putting this on. And if you're on your last bead, great. And if not, you're still working on it. The nice thing about it is that things don't vary too much for the last part. So we're going to be getting that bead on. So I'm going to be coming from this side. Okay, so if you are on your last bead, then it will look something like this. So what's fun about this is that, if you want to get super nerdy with your friends, you can make binary beads. And you could also do this with like Morse code. That would be something. You could actually even make words with Morse code, with the dots and dashes. You could assign a bead for a dot and a bead for a dash and make words if you wanted to. So that would be pretty cool too. But yeah, if anybody asks, well, is there a reason your beads are arranged that way? You can be like, it's my initial. Or it's, I don't know, whatever letter you picked, or number. You could have gone online and looked for a number. Maybe you wanted to do your favorite number, something like that. But I think it gives it a little bit more, at least, for you making it, it gives it a little bit more maybe meaning and just like thoughtfulness of like, it's just not random beads, but there's kind of a meaning behind it. So I think that's kind of cool. Okay, so maybe you're done with your beads, maybe you're not. You can keep going. If you're not, I'm going to talk for a little bit here in just a second. So we started out our bracelet with making 4 square knots. So we are going to finish to make it even with 4 square knots. This is at a point, however, if you have, extra string, or you don't think it's going to fit your wrist, I mean, you can kind of get an idea if it'll fit or not. I think once I do 4 more, I have a pretty big wrist, obviously. I have an adult size wrist, so you at home, maybe with smaller wrists, I'm sure this will fit fine, but if you are a grown-up doing this, you could have always added more at the beginning, or even do more at the end. So I'm trying to make it even, so I'm doing 4 at the beginning, and then we'll do 4 at the end. So we'll just do 4 more square knots, or doing basically 8 knots on one on each side for 8 times. So again, I know it looks like we're running out of, you can't really tell. It might look like you're running out of string, but the thing is at the very end, we're going to be cutting off most of that anyway. So we'll just need to make a couple of like knots, and so that those will go into the loops that you made at the very beginning, and that's how you will kind of attach it around your wrist. So, and again, it's a little bit harder to tell with the beads, but you can see here I have this little bump on this side that indicates 1/2 knot, half square knot, and when I do it from on the other side, and tighten that up, I get a bump on the other side. So so if you're doing this and you're like, how many have I done? I've lost my place. If you kind of count your bumps, then that's how so I know like 1, 2, that's 1 full square knot. So I've done it 1 time. So it's a nice, easy way to kind of count. Or if you lose your place and how many you've done. Okay. So we're just gonna do this. Oh, see, and so I know I left. Oh, yeah. Now I need to do it on this side. Oh no, I need to do the regular P. See, I've even confused myself. So I have a bump on the right side, so I know my next one my P needs to be on the right side. I feel like I should know better, being that I've made a billion of these. Not a billion, but probably like 5 or 6. I've made quite a few. Okay, so we've gotten 1, 2, so we'll do this 2 more times. Okay. Might move this up a little bit, just so you can see how my end is. Okay, my end part is looking, the end of my strings. Okay, so bringing it up in. Okay, so I think that's 3. Let's see, I got 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay, so we're gonna do this 1 more time, and then we'll basically be done, which is pretty fun. And then you'll have a fun bracelet to wear at the end of today. So the nice thing, because we basically, this middle string isn't moving. It obviously doesn't need to be as long as the outer 2 strings. So hopefully and if you have a tiny little wrist, you obviously don't have to do 4. If you have a really small wrist, you can do less or more. Okay. So I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now I'm gonna well, before I do that. So now it should look something like this, your bracelet. And basically all we need to do now is tie the ends off. So A, it doesn't unravel, and B, it creates a little like a little knot ball that your loops that you made at the beginning will go through. So let's do that really quickly. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take, and actually I'm going to retape this down because I think it'll be a little bit easier if I retape it. So basically you're just going to make a kind of, I say square knot. There's a square knot for like macrame, which we just did, and just like your general, like if you had a piece of string and was tying a knot in it, this is that. So basically, like if you were taking one string and then making your loop and bringing it up and into that, and then like that's a square knot. But instead of just doing it with the one strand, we're going to be doing it with all strands. So, and it can get a little funky. So if you need help from a grown-up, that is totally okay. So what I'm going to do is kind of just make a loop with the four, kind of with my finger, my left hand, and then bring in all four of those strands in that loop. And then before I tighten it down, so now you can kind of see I've had that loop or that square knot, I'm going to kind of push up on what's going to be this knot part, and I'm going to push it up so it ends kind of near where I don't want it all the way, you can see how there's like some excess string right here. I don't want it to where there's a lot of excess string. I want it so that I might even loosen it up. I want it so that it's kind of near the end of my bracelet, so there's not a lot of excess string. So how I'm going to do that is by kind of pushing it up towards, and it's okay if there's like a little bit, because we obviously need it. There needs to be a little bit of room to get it through that loop, but I'm just going to be pushing, and you can kind of pull on the strings just to make it nice and tight. And if you need to test it, you should only need to do one square knot, because if you do more than that, it might not be able to fit through, and so fit through your loops. So you basically, again, we talked about last week how you wanted your loops big enough to allow this little knot ball to go through, but not so big that it would be loosey-goosey and could potentially fall off your wrist. So I know it looks like it's going to fit pretty easily, and it kind of gives I think it's big enough that it should stay on my wrist, but not so big that it will come off easily. And if you feel like it will come off easily, you can always make another loop. You can always make another, if you feel like your loops are too big for your one little knot ball, you can always make another one. Might be a little bit trickier. Like my two middle strings are kind of small, which is okay if you need to do them, kind of individually. Maybe you won't even be able to get those last two. I think you should be able to do it without all four. Maybe not. Let's see. Oh, there we go. As long as you kind of tighten it up. So maybe make it a little bit bigger if you need to by just kind of adding another square knot. And then kind of your last thing you want to do is just kind of pull the loose ends of so that they're nice and tight, so that they don't, and this is thick enough string and there's enough friction, there's enough like texture to it that if you pull tight enough, it should stay and not unravel. And then the last thing you have to do is just kind of cut off the ends. And then there you go. And so now you have a fun little bracelet for you. And so that is, I guess, whatever letter you chose or number you chose. And again, this would just fit me. I have a bigger wrist than probably most of you watching. And so I'm thinking this length will probably fit you. It's a little bit small on me, but then again, I have a little bit bigger wrist. But yeah, your knot at the end, your little knot ball at the end should just go right over, or your loops should just go over right over that. And even when I pull it, it's staying put. So yeah, so this is a really fun way. I don't know, you could do it with different colored string, obviously. You can do it with lots of different colored beads. You don't even have to use beads. You could use 2 different colored strings or 4 different colored strings and then make it really fun. So yeah, this is like something that you can really customize on your own. If you felt like you wanted to do some other macrame projects. So yeah, that is the end of this week's Make It activity. So there's going to be, if you have got one of our Take and Make kits, there's obviously more material for another activity. We are going to be making a keychain next week, not next week, in 2 weeks. And we will be resuming that on April 28th. We are going to be off next week for after school club, the 19th through the 22nd. So we will not be doing any after school clubs Monday through Thursday, April 19th through the 22nd. And we will be resuming our after school clubs on the 26th. So hopefully you will join us then. Make sure to go to our bean stack if you were watching this and wanted to mark down that you watched this and participated. You can go to our bean stack, or do space bean stack kind of community engagement platform, and you can say that you attended this this kind of Twitch session, and it will the more activities that you do on it and more badges, you'll get little tickets to win prizes. So yeah, hopefully you do that, and let us know what you think of all of our programs that we are doing. If you would like to, we love your feedback. If you want to take a survey. So yeah, anyway, join us in 2 weeks when we will be making a macrame keychain. So thanks for joining us this week, and we will see you again next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.